and the e-commerce national delivery systems, ends as we know it, among others, are highlighted by the Planning Institute of Jamaica in their survey. The ease of doing business improved with transition to several services online, such as the tax compliance certificate, where the auto-approval process is now done online, the retrofitting of court facilities to embrace technological facilities for remote hearings and software that supports government-to-government relations. The success of these initiatives is attributed to the contribution of dedicated public servants to embrace these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, first opposition speaker, for your presentation. Let's take the case from the second proposition speaker.
Mr. Speaker, we first want to challenge something that we hear from side opposition. We can provide evidence that the IDB is the lead funding agency for digital transformation and transformation across our public sector. So money is not our problem. Our problem lies with the bureaucracy that is failing to implement the programs. And we will further demonstrate that this is the case across the system. It is not about us not having the money, my opposition leader. Mr. Speaker, members of the panel, good morning. Jamaica's historical approach to digital transformation has exacerbated resistance, leading to botched initiatives, many of which the opposition leader spoke of, which has increased the misery index of the people of Jamaica. Digitization is not an end in and of itself. It must translate into more seamless, responsive, and efficient government. Sadly, we do not have this because those steering the public sector have not embraced a new way of thinking, a new mindset, and a new approach to drive real innovation and performance management. The status quo remains. I will cover the following thematic areas: not prepared, but expected to adapt to new technologies; bubbling resistance, the muzzled approach to transformation; and finally, putting people at the center of the transformation. Mr. Speaker, resistance in the public sector is rooted in the failure of education. And we are arguing that the education system produces public sector workers who are not digitally adequate to respond to the emerging technologies. And this is quite a conundrum, isn't it? On one hand, we are having to exist in an ever-evolving digital landscape that demands constant adaptation and innovation. But yet, the education system churns out public sector workers that cannot adapt. And we are seeing it in the resistance we are seeing in the public sector. Mr. Speaker, comparatively, Jamaica has a 55% internet penetration pre-pandemic. Comparatively, Barbados was 81.8%. Where is the GOJ broadband strategy? Can you connect to government public Wi-Fi hotspot? The last time I tried, it said connected without internet. This is implementation that is failing. We have implemented, but we are not monitoring. It is not a money issue, opposition leader. Digital illiteracy inures a frustrating public sector. Economies with a higher digital penetration translates into improved ease of doing business. We hear the opposition leader highlighting information about the ease of doing business, but I stand here and challenge the veracity of those data. Barbados ranks in the ease of paying taxes at 96, while Jamaica ranks at 124. That is a great disparity. But yet, the opposition leader talks about the successes. Mr. Speaker, we want to point to now bubbling resistance within the public sector. There is clear evidence of the culmination of the flawed strategy over time. The public sector is now resistant, where it is spinning in a wheel of sea of resistance from workers who feel ignored and who feel left behind. Minister Vaz recognized this when he noted that the implementation of digital technologies historically has focused on systems. But now the public servants are resisting because they feel that they have been left behind.
Point of information.
Not at this time. Despite digitizing some of the services, the misery index of Jamaicans doing business at TAJ is still high. Misery index of people clearing a barrel is still high. The misery index of Jamaicans registering a company is still high. Digitized, but not transformed. Transformation is about embracing change. It is about rethinking what you are as a public servant and how you deliver public goods and services. We have not seen that change in mindset. And this is supported by Dr. Knife, who notes that resistance is at a palpable level at this juncture. Mr. Speaker, we also draw to IDB, who makes the point that 61% of public managers interviewed in a report noted that they have faced resistance in the implementation of projects across the public sector. A classic example, the TAJ, who the opposition will brag as being a success story, they have acknowledged that in their implementation process, they have seen resistance from staff, and this confirms our argument that we are not having a resource issue, we are having an implementation issue at those at top management, middle management, and naturally it trickles down to those at the lower level. Mr. Speaker, we will speak to some of the issues as it relates to TAJ consistently being wobbling along. It costs the country millions in productive hours because TAJ customer service is not one that is pleasing to the Jamaican people. Digitalize, but not transform. Digital transformation, which we are here today, is about, as my Prime Minister outlined, about improving service delivery. It is about improving Jamaica's experience, the digital interface with government. We are not seeing that. We are not transformed. Mr. Speaker, I will point to some other initiatives such as the My HR Plus. Slow out the blocks, I would say. However, bursars are already resisting this transition. How do you respond, Mr. Opposition Leader? Also, Mr. Speaker, the Jamaica Development Application Portal is designed to make government operations streamlined. But where is that project, Mr. Speaker? The funding of IDB is fueling it, but implementation is a bottleneck issue. This is because if senior managers should respond, they will become obsolete. Let me talk about e-procurement. Tashfin Ahmad et al. Shows that public sector workers display resistance to e-procurement systems despite the obvious benefits. Mr. Speaker, digitalized but not transformed.
Thank you, second proposition speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take the contribution from the second opposition speaker.
Good afternoon, distinguished adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, and my esteemed opponents. Digitalize but not transform. I'm not getting the point where there is a resistance, though. I am truly appalled by the baseless declarations purported by the proposition this afternoon. I believe my teammate made it very clear that the Jamaican public sector is gung-ho on the concept of digital transformation. The Jamaican public sector is willing, able, and ready, from policies to statutory bodies, projects, and initiatives. I'm sure my opponents from the Development Bank of Jamaica can attest to the concerted efforts of the public sector that embraced and enabled the thrust toward digital transformation in the private sector during the lockdown of the COVID-19 pandemic. Am I wrong in believing that the same sentiments would resonate for digital transformation in at least some of your in-office services? I think not. A 2015 peer-reviewed academic article titled Barriers to Transforming Government in Jamaica, the authors found that organizational issues such as top management support, resistance to change to the electronic way, and lack of collaboration are not identified as barriers to e-government in Jamaica. Should this well-researched, credible piece of data not be enough, I will illustrate just how much the Jamaican public sector has adopted new technology in the management of government business. Despite what our esteemed opponents may wish to present this afternoon, the facts are clear. The DOJ has established through its many initiatives and policies just how valuable new technology is in delivering the many processes of the public sector. May I remind our opponents that the DOJ ICT Policy Standards and Guidelines Manual of 2018, PSG Manual for short, was established to better understand, on the part of all key stakeholders not accepted, of their roles and responsibilities with respect to the management of IT in the government. It also strengthens the management of IT across government and better enable decision-making. The PSG manual exemplifies the public sector's goal and targeted efforts to propel digital transformation within the public sector. Not only that, but the PSG manual, written by public sector workers, I might add, was established via a consultative process with all MDAs, thus representing one of the public sector's many thrusts towards digital transformation. The DOJ Policies Guidelines Manual illustrates the value of digitalization across the Jamaican public sector, as well as establishing an iterative culture of decision-making with respect to digitalization. As my teammate stated earlier, I will elaborate on the social challenges, outlining two key points that illustrate the Jamaican public sector's willingness towards adapting new technology. Firstly, the Jamaican public sector is keen on digital transformation as they seek to address the challenge of digital divide on the island. The 2011 ICT policy, written by public sector workers, defined digital divide as the gap between people with effective access to digital and information technology and those with very limited or no access at all. It includes the imbalances in physical access to technology as well as the imbalances with affordability. As one of the public sector's efforts to address digital divide in Jamaica, the National Broadband Initiative was developed in December 2020 to address the inequalities caused by digital divide. This initiative included the expansion of government fiber optic cable, microwave infrastructure, and public Wi-Fi hotspots.
Is it in use?
Is it because there is resistance? Now, opponents, tell me if there were that. If it were that the public sector was resistant to new technologies, why were these initiatives welcomed with open arms? Secondly, the Jamaican public sector's eagerness towards digital transformation is shown in the concerted and celebrated effort to incorporate digital technology in education. One of the more prominent initiatives, eLearning Jamaica, established in 2005 with responsibility for implemented e-learning projects in collaboration with ministries, departments, and agencies. eLearning Jamaica provides state-of-the-art technology in government-operated schools, selected teachers' colleges, and other institutions across the island to enhance teaching and learning processes. What were you saying, Second Speaker, about teaching the younger generation about digital transformation? My opponents, let us not forget that during the height of the pandemic, our education stakeholders built up a tremendous amount of resilience and capacity in technology-mediated instructions. Speaking at the investor briefing for the initial public offering of one-on-one educational services last August, Minister Favour Williams in her remarks stated that, and I quote, "Incorporation of technology in the teaching and learning process will remain a permanent component of the education system." This exemplifies without any uncertainty that there is indeed championing of digital transformation in the public sector by the public sector. In closing, judges, opponents, as Jamaica strives towards achieving first world status and enhancing economic development, I wish to reiterate that digital transformation is an ongoing process. Therefore, what is relevant 2 years ago may very well evolve into something new today. As you will recall, the pandemic has quickened the pace with which the nation has approached the fourth industrial revolution. As there was increased adaptation of technology supporting productivity improvements, which means the pandemic called for a particular strain of technological transformation in Jamaica. Had the public sector not been willing to embrace this particular opportunity, I assure you, the acceleration that Jamaica experienced would not have been possible. Therefore, it is abundantly clear that the public sector is in fact embracing new technology. I rest my case.
Thank you, second opposition speaker. And we will take the case from the third proposition speaker. Right, we're ready when you are.
With all the glorious infrastructure and the investment mentioned by the opposition, I ask the question, why are we still lagging behind? I had a toothache on my first trip to the United States. I found a public health clinic, and within 5 minutes, my travel and residence information were verified by a collaboration system. The dental consultant was connected through video conferencing with access to all the relevant operation tools. Guided by the consultant, the dental staff cured my condition in just under 1 hour. Within hours, I was emailed a comprehensive document for my health records. Opposition leader, at no level did I interact with paper or resubmitted information already in government database. Mr. Speaker, this is digital transformation. From beginning to end, the people, the product, and the process synchronized for the ease of those working in the public sector and for the benefit of the end user. Let me reiterate. This government is not arguing whether public sector is digitized, nor are we arguing whether there is digitalization within the public sector. This government embraces the fundamental argument presented in the motion that public sector organizational culture stages one of the biggest barriers to digital transformation. Let's talk about resistance. Why? Why did my babysitter need a whole day to collect her path check? In fact, why was she among hundreds that stand in the sun for 4 hours only to be told that money ran out for the rest of the day? Why? Why, despite filling out an application for birth certificate online, you are still required to print the paper and join the long lines of the RGD? This is because we are digitized, but the process and the people are not transformed. Where is the business process improvement? Not accepted at this moment. Where is the hassle-free experience with government and the greater efficiency? Mr. Speaker, digital transformation is when a country can conduct an election online like Estonia. Digital transformation is when with the ease of doing business is dramatically improved. Digital transformation, my friend, is when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the click of one button, can tell us how many Jamaicans are living in the diaspora. Can you do that? Do that and beat me. Do that right now and beat me. Mr. Speaker, how many times have you heard the saying, you cannot put the cart before the horse? Only when people drive technology will we get digital transformation. The IDB says the connection between the digital agenda and the human capital management is both undeniable and inescapable. Mr. Speaker, this suggests that the engine behind digital transformation includes people and process. Culture will only shift when we own the changes to the product, the process, and the plan. The public sector must therefore be brought in at the stage of conceptualization and design, and not at the point of implementation. Digital transformation without people inclusion only leads to frustration, generational segregation, resignation, skills migration, resulting in public sector resistance. Mr. Speaker, that same IDB report further states that no digital transformation is possible unless the digital specialists carry it out and civil servants are capable to properly implement the new technologies. My opponents, this government is aware of the public sector digital transformation plan. However, how effective is the current coordination efforts? How do we hold civil servants accountable? Again, how do we measure this phenomenon? For digital transformation to truly take place, the process must be continuous, investment humongous, the achievement trackable, not only at the macro level, but also at the micro level, where most of the resistance is demonstrated. All this intertwined with continuous meaningful engagement with those who are at the front line of implementation. Let us set up then a digital transformation oversight committee, detox, public sector transformation. In this industrial revolution is not possible without synchronization of product, process, and people engaging in the execution of an agile digital transformational plan. Otherwise, we are stuck at digitalization. I thank you.
We thank the third proposition speaker for that rather spirited contribution to the debate. Let's take the contribution from the third opposition speaker. After which, we will pause for 1 minute to allow the reply speakers to gather their thoughts. Then we will take the opposition reply speaker, followed by the final speaker, the proposition reply speaker. So 5 minutes on the clock.
Thank you. Tim O'Reilly says, what new technology does is create new opportunities to do a job that customers want done. In addressing my opponents, two things. Putting people at the center of the process. The government of Jamaica has done that. They've even mandated all MDAs within the public sector to develop customer improvement plans and a team to do the monitoring through the Service Excellence Program. Two, reference to make, as to say, digital transformation, RGD. During 2022-23, the last 42 months recorded a 130% increase in offline services to both local and foreign customers. So I better disagree that digital transformation e-government is actually taking place. Good afternoon, judges, my humble opponents, and guests. Based on this quote, to further strengthen my team's arguments, I will now give 3 examples. As a matter of fact, I started as to how public sector workers embrace new technologies to create new opportunities to deliver world-class customer service to the public. First, the RGD, through implementation of new technologies, as highlighted before, has seen an increase in online services to their customers, including record updating and real-time online searches. Also increasing online services included application of birth certificates, which you can now pay online, and RGD will even send the documents overseas to their clients. Digital e-government at its best. Secondly, the Jamaican Customs Agency, through its J-Swift, creates new opportunities for improving the delivery of all services to exporters and importers through a single access point, one shop all, as they would call it. This allows for the removal of unnecessary bureaucracy while improving efficiency and increasing the quality of our goods and services, my humble opponents. In fact, and I have demonstrated my esteemed opponents, our arguments do not lag in the past, nor are they grounded in subjectivity. We are supported by real examples of how dedicated public servants and public organizations continue to overcome these barriers, such as poor infrastructure and limited resources, which we do get, like from IDB, to innovate in the effective discharge of their mandate. Are you still in doubt, my opponents? The third example, the Jamaica Constabulary Force has invited the public, you and me, to attend their 4-day exposition under the theme People, Quality, and guess what? Technology, to be held 11th to the 14th of May at the arena. This surely will demonstrate how the JCF is celebrating innovation to deliver greater level of services to us, the public. I'm going to reiterate a comment raised by my first speaker. My humble opponent, even our country leaders recognize technological embrace by the public sector. The Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, in a speech delivered during the virtual 2021 Civil Service Week Church service, said the government recognizes and appreciates how quickly civil servants have adapted to the use of technology outside the physical of a space to meet the demand of the public. To defend this move as it stands is an affront to the many public servants who, contrary to the statement it purports, welcome new technology as we appreciate its facilitation of our work. Are you, my brother opponents, resistant to change? Are you truly unwilling to embrace new technology? Judges, guests, and my esteemed opponents, my first speaker has contextualized the mood and provided strong arguments that technical and financial barriers prevent the utilization of technology in the public sector. My second speaker took the argument even further by highlighting social barriers. And you have just heard my closing argument, presenting 3 strong examples that support the position that public workers are not resistant to change and openly embrace technologies. Therefore, the public sector workers, new technology has indeed been the critical tool for increasing individual and collective productivity and output, and ultimately creating new market growth, social development, and customer satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, third opposition speaker. We will pause for 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 minute has passed. I think you got 30 seconds in addition. But with that, we will take the opposition reply speaker, followed by proposition.
Honorable judges, members of the audience, my opponents, good day once more. My opponents referenced the inaccessibility of laptops in the education system. But let me point out to the government that it is not the public sector's responsibility to provide these technologies and training. How can they embrace what is not provided? The implementation of the Jamaica Eye program is exemplary when we consider the infrastructure expansion towards the rural and the urban societies. It is island-wide and inclusive. Jamaica Eye as used by officers and the road safety unit in terms of filing traffic violations. Also, mention was made about the sustainable implementation. We cannot depend on the external support of the IDB and other donors all the time. Technologies require frequent maintenance. If we are to wait on funding all the time, that sounds like a delay in transformation to me. There was also mention of implemented but not monitoring. Transformation goes beyond just providing these technologies. Evidence were provided by our opponents or anecdotal, which is baseless and unscientific. Reference made to the education system and being conducive to technology. Coming straight from my opponent's mouth, it is the education structure that impedes transformation and not the organizational culture of the wider public sector. It is pointless to compare a US experience to a developed country like Jamaica when there is substantial difference between our two economies. Slovenia, for example, which is a country with similar social and economic structure of Jamaica, has effective digital transformation because of a greater allocation of their resources to ICT development, which is limited, as highlighted by the government of Jamaica, with a mere $7.2 billion and relying on aid which is not sustainable for the effective implementation of digital transformation in the public sector. With this, we rest. Thank you.
I'll tell you when you can begin. Sure. All right, so you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we have seen today is an opposition that has failed to understand the motion. The opposition has come here today and spoken about efforts at digitization. But where they have failed, and conveniently so, is to highlight digital transformation. And that is what we want the focus to be on. Digital transformation is not a means in and of itself. It results in something. What that something is, opposition: improved business processes, improved customer experience for the citizens, and an overall improved bureaucracy that is inviting to invest with the government. Mr. Speaker, we have presented arguments where we acknowledge that there are efforts to digitize, but we have demonstrated that those efforts are being frustrated by a bureaucracy that is not willing to pivot, a bureaucracy that is not willing to change, and it is primarily because it suits the interests of those at the helm. Also, Mr. Speaker, Cabinet gives policy direction, but Cabinet does not implement. Implementation is where we're having the problem, not the announcements. So the Prime Minister will come and announce that we are establishing the ICT authority. Up to last week, Minister Green continues to promise an ICT authority. Where the lag is, where the bottleneck is within the MDAs that have failed to track and to establish a program for monitoring and performance. Mr. Speaker, we have institutionalized a framework here with the TIU, but the TIU will tell you that they have trained 20 change makers. But where are the results? It cannot be that people are just updating resumes. We must see the transformation. And that is where the opposition is missing the mark. They have not understood the gravity of our argument. We are not talking about digitization. We are talking about where is the improved public service delivery. You spoke to the traffic ticket violation issue. But how can one man have 500 tickets and still able to renew his driver's license? That reflects a bureaucracy that is not in sync, it is not coordinated, and it is not prepared to respond to what the issues are. That is not a money issue. That is a mere managerial issue. Why is it that you apply online for a birth certificate and you have to still print the paper and carry it into RGD? That is just frustrating the Jamaican people. We want a re-envisioned approach. We are proposing that transformation is about a new way of thinking. We want the public sector to embrace new digital technology. We want them to live it. And the opposition, you continue to miss the mark.
Thank you so very much, speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the only thing missing was an offering plate. Let us give another round of applause to the DBJ and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. They have debated the moot. One of the biggest barriers to digital transformation in the public sector is organizational culture. Be it resolved that the Jamaican public sector is resistant to change and not willing to embrace new technologies. Thank you so very much, teams. The judges will now deliberate, and we will use that time to refresh ourselves. The next person from which you will hear is the chief adjudicator, who will sum up the match and announce the winner. For those of you online, stay tuned. We will be right back.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I have judged several debates on the local debate circuit, and I've also had the opportunity to judge internationally. I think I can say unreservedly, and I think that is a consensus from the panel, that the kind of arguments that we saw in this debate was indicative of quality reasoning, credibility, and an employment of intellect in the crafting of those arguments. And I think that for that, we should commend the teams that participated today. I will walk you through how the adjudicators saw the match, and then I will give you the final decision with respect to the team that has won this debate. Let's look at the debate that we saw. Proposition provided us with a differentiation between digitalization and digital transformation. Proposition identified, in essence, that digitalization refers to providing the kind of infrastructure and technological framework and architecture to allow for the provision of better services. However, they identify that that in and of itself is not good, that the provision of this framework and architecture is not sufficient to have an improvement in people's interactions with government entities. So they pointed out to digital transformation, and they identified that digital transformation should be the goal, but digital transformation refers to the overall improvement in people's experiences with government entities where there are not a lot of bottlenecks and people are essentially satisfied. And they say that the overall product is improved. The panel did not buy very much convincingly this sort of differentiation that exists. The panel thought, in its estimation, that opposition would have highlighted that there is not really a distinct differentiation between digitalization of government services and digital transformation. And alas, we didn't get how significant that is to proving the burden that proposition has that people are resistant to change. So I think that that sort of differentiation between digitization and digital transformation did not advance or help proposition in satisfying the burden that they have in this debate of proving why people are resistant to change. So let's go further to see how proposition tried to prove and satisfy this burden. Proposition highlighted that, well, the pandemic has exposed the weaknesses, amplified the deficiencies in government's technological infrastructure, etc. And then they went further to say that we need to improve how people engage with government on the digital level. They identified that the fact that people are resistant to change is what is causing this poor outcome with respect to the kind of service that people get. So they identified a concept called unresponsive obstruction. They said that there are people in the public sector who are reluctant to change, they are resistant to change, and there's a lack of enthusiasm with respect to adopting new technological procedures to engage in the delivery of services. What was lacking on proposition's case, in the estimation of the panel, is why there would be this resistance. So we heard from the first speaker right down to the third speaker that there is this resistance. But it was not proven or developed why there is this resistance. What in the status quo is being protected by the public sector workers, or what will come as a result of this technological change that the public servants are fearful of that causes them to be resistant. So it is not sufficient to tell us that they are resistant. You have to tell us what causes this resistance. Is it that they are protecting something in the status quo? Or is it that they are fearful of a particular outcome that will be heralded by this adoption of technology? Alas, we didn't get that. So when we just oppose this case from proposition against opposition, opposition said, government has provided the infrastructure, albeit we accept that the infrastructure provided is not adequate to get the kind of outcome that Prop wants. Prop wants improved services, improved digital products, so that people don't have to wait in a line at TAJ, they don't have to submit birth certificates 2 times, etc. But Prop said, opposition said, we have provided assistance to essentially ameliorate those concerns. However, we have to take into appreciation government's resource constraints. And it is because of the resource constraints why we are not getting the final outcome that proposition wants. It is not a resistant to change. But then we heard a clapback, a beautiful clapback, I think, from proposition, that, well, it's not the government's coffers that funds digital transformation. It is the IDB. But then I think with very commendable from opposition is another response again, that, well, the kind of funding that is needed to generate the kind of infrastructure and the kind of change that Prop wants has to be funding on a sustainable basis. And they identified that even the very same example that the third speaker pointed out about the United States and other jurisdictions, they have been able to sustainably create that sort of funding to beef up their infrastructure, which is not present in our context because of the resource constraints. So they have argued that irrespective of the funding that comes from the IDB, there has to be some sort of support given by our local administration for that to be done. So on that particular clash, opposition wins that clash as to what is the real cause why we're not seeing the final improvement in the people's experience with government entities. But we think that opposition did a beautiful job in going further to identifying that it is not just about technological architecture and framework. It's about looking at the fact that in different sections in the country, we have what is called the digital divide. The fact that there are public sector workers in rural areas, and the infrastructure framework is not set up in these rural areas to facilitate the smooth delivery of services. So the bad service that people get is not because public sector workers are resistant to change, it's the fact that in these rural areas, because of the resource constraints, we have not been able to get the kind of funding, the kind of available resources to beef up this infrastructure. So in essence, opposition is arguing, had we been able to sufficiently allocate resources towards beefing up this infrastructure, then we wouldn't get the kind of bad, poor service that people engage with from the public sector. It is not about resistance to change. It is not about the people or the organization. So I think that in essence, was the case submitted. So the panel weighed those 2 cases and thought that the arguments from opposition would have won this debate. Significantly so because the burden on proposition was not proved and it needed to be fully articulated. Why is it that people would be resistant? All right, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, opposition has won this debate. And the scores were very close, and possibly we have DBJ could come back as a wild card because on 241 points, opposition has won this debate, and closely behind on 229 points is the Development Bank of Jamaica. So, ladies and gentlemen, the adjudicators are here. Please ask us questions, and everyone. And proposition as well. The best speaker in this debate, thank you for reminding me, Tamika. So on point, the best speaker in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, was the speaker who brought the arguments that were principled and that stood primarily at the end of the debate, the first opposition speaker. Thank you for tuning in to round 2 of the public sector debate competition. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good afternoon.